After Devil May Cry 2 was released and received mixed to bad reviews, the now producer Hideaki Itsuno decided to immediately start work on a sequel in a last-ditch effort to save the series, as Devil May Cry 2 had left such a bad taste in the mouth of consumers. This effort is what we now know as Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening, a prequel taking place well before the events of the first game, before Dante even had a name for his business, with the plot focused around him and his twin brother Virgil, both known as the Sons of Sparta. For those that don't know, Devil May Cry 3 is heralded as one of, if not the best Devil May Cry game in the series, and while I'm not going to go as far to say it's the best game in the series, it does certainly hold its own and stand up there in terms of quality and fun, especially after the boredom that was Devil May Cry 2. And DMC3, thanks to its success, managed to get a special edition greenlit immediately, as well as a sequel, which I'll talk more about when I get to Devil May Cry 4 later on. The special edition of DMC3 changed a few things like the difficulty, which originally was very different between the US and Japan. Where Japan had easy, normal, and hard, America had the same thing in name only, because Japan's normal mode was America's easy mode, and the hard mode for America didn't exist in Japan. Now, thanks to the special edition, all the difficulties are the same, with the American hard mode being renamed very hard mode. The special edition also added a playable Virgil, which just goes to show how well his rival battles were done and how intricate he was that he could get his own moveset. Much like with DMC 1 and 2, I'm going to be playing this game multiple times to get the full experience with all available characters, so I'm going to be doing a hard mode run with Virgil, a very hard run with Dante, and I'm going to be just playing the Nintendo Switch version for footage of that, because, jumping the gun a bit here, that's the version you should get above all else if you don't really care about modding the PC version, or you just don't have a good PC in the first place. But without further ado, let's get this party started.
I'm going to be combining the small snippets of Virgil's story with the main story as well here, so let's start with Virgil's side. Virgil goes to visit a local library, reading up on his fine literature until the shadowy and ominous figure, named Arkham, approaches and talks about the power of Sparta, which intrigues Virgil. Afterwards, they approach this giant tower before Virgil engages in some haphazard demon slaying once Arkham leaves for an item that they'll need. The main game of Devil May Cry 3 opens on Dante in his shop after having just taken a shower, sitting down and answering a phone call before hanging up because he's not open for business. Arkham then enters immediately after, taking note of Dante's amulet before ambushing the demons, seemingly delivering lethal blows to Dante before we get the best scene in the game.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Oh yeah, now that's what I'm talking about. I think I should also take this time to mention that most, if not all, of the stunts you see in these cutscenes were actually done in mocap with real actors, and it just looks far, far smoother than it did in the previous games. Not to mention the voice acting is kind of done on a higher standard as well. Once Dante finishes off the demons in his shop and dons his signature red coat, we see the Temenigru Tower suddenly come up out of nowhere, with a mini-boss Dante was just fighting go to the top, only to be killed by Virgil immediately after. Dante then approaches the Temenigru, being stopped by Cerberus at the entrance, and it's here that we see more of the lovable, cocky Dante we appreciated in DMC1. Once Dante defeats Cerberus, though, he obtains him as a weapon, and this happens for a few more bosses down the line, namely Agni and Rudra, Nevin, and Beowulf, despite that last one being slain by Virgil. All of a sudden, we see this new character on a motorbike burning up some stray demons with her motorcycle as she approaches the tower as well, quickly meeting up with Dante after he defeated Cerberus, and I think they get a good first impression of each other. After a few more missions, with one of them ending on this Jester character, Dante makes his way to the top of the tower before coming face to face with his brother Virgil, and they engage in witty banter before clashing swords, with Virgil being the clear victor, stabbing Dante in the chest not once, but twice. Of course, Dante isn't human though, as once he's stabbed with his own sword, he awakens to his devil trigger, acting just like it did in the first game. No more amulet shenanigans, and honestly I can't say I don't miss it, though it was intriguing back in DMC2. Once Dante gets eaten by the Leviathan and then kills it from the inside, he lands next to the unnamed lady as they face off some demons together before Dante leaves to continue on, running into more resistance. Meanwhile, Virgil is about to open the gate to the demon world from Power Sparta, but not before he kills the only person who knows the full ritual. Hope that doesn't bite him back later. Lady eventually meets back up with Dante as soon as they're both at Arkham's dead body, which, after an offhand comment from Dante, we learn that Arkham was the lady's father, having sacrificed his own wife to attain demonic power. The lady eventually succumbs to grief and Dante leaves, contemplating some things in his head. Immediately after Dante leaves, though, it turns out Arkham is still barely alive, explaining that Virgil had been manipulating him from the start, which, if you've seen the opening cutscene with Virgil, you know that's a complete lie, but the lady hasn't and she takes his word for it, now going after Virgil. As Virgil attempts to conduct the ritual to open the gate to hell, it turns out it didn't quite work, and then Dante shows up, ready for a rematch, which Virgil agrees to quite quickly, donning his flashy new greaves. Their fight is interrupted by the lady, however the brothers tire themselves out, followed by clapping from the jester, explaining that everything went exactly as he wanted, along with what Virgil was missing for the ritual.
Oh, bravo! I never dreamed that things would go so smoothly. Well done, everyone. Well done. You. Don't be a bad girl, Mary.
When Sparta sealed the gate to the demon realm oh so long ago, he had used his own blood, the amulets that Dante and Virgil had received from their mother, and the blood of a priestess, which was the lady's mother. Also, the jester is Arkham. I didn't really know how else to mention that, but that's the thing. It really makes the fight with him standing as odd, like, why is he wasting time with you like this? Once Arkham explains all of this and spills the lady's blood, the three corner him, but with the seal broken, Arkham takes them all out by surprise, with Virgil falling into the abyss, never to be heard from. Nope, couldn't keep a straight face. Dante and Lady go their separate ways to try and get to the top of the tower, with Lady using a grappling hook to get the top, while Dante goes to the bottom and uses action movie logic, riding a motorcycle up the side of the tower. Unfortunately, Lady is stuck in the real world and spends about 3 missions climbing up the tower before we see her again. While the two climb the tower, however, Arkham is in the demon realm, finding Sparta's sword Force Edge, with one combined with the amulet to make the devil's sword or not. Huh. Might actually have to be Sparta's descendant for that. Lady and Dante meet up again in the Divine Library, where you get a boss fight with Lady that... Right. Once Lady's defeated, she gives Dante her signature rocket launcher, Kalina On, named after her late mother. With this, Dante goes to the underworld to defeat Arkham, only to see the form of his father, Sparta, before Arkham turns into a...
Staring into a backed-up toilet.
After fighting Arkham for a while, Virgil suddenly shows up and assists you in the fight, and this is really only cool when you have two people together, as if a second controller is plugged in. Player 2 can control Virgil independently. Otherwise, it breaks the fight in half in Arkham's favor. You lose access to both style abilities and your devil trigger. Why, I don't know, and I hate it. Once the twin sons of Sparta defeat Arkham, he gets sent back to the human world right in front of Lady as she confronts him about his deeds before shooting him in the head. Despite how evil Arkham was, though, he was still her father, and killing your own parent would mess anybody up inside as you see Lady cry after killing Arkham. Meanwhile, back in the underworld, Dante and Virgil fight one last time, with Virgil now using Force Edge in the fight before Dante eventually reigns victorious over his brother. Virgil doesn't take this well as he lets himself fall deeper into the underworld, leaving Dante alone with their father's sword, which he is in the next game canonically. Until it's replaced with the Laster 10 minutes in. Very sentimental. Dante meets back up with Lady outside the Temenigru as they reminisce and slay more demons afterwards. Once all that's said and done, though, Dante goes back to his shop and repairs it completely, now naming it the recognizable and iconic Devil May Cry. Honestly, I'm more interested in how he repaired it, though. Last we saw the building, it caved in on itself. Who'd he foot the bill to? Meanwhile, in the underworld, Virgil notices the three eyes of Mundus after his defeat to Dante, soon before running in like an idiot and inevitably losing, soon to become Nilo Angelo in the next game. Man, is this story an improvement over everything in the previous game, or what? Not to mention seeing where Dante began gives us access to seeing his whole character arc overall through games, going from cocky, happy-go-lucky to completely alone and closed off, plus recontextualizing things from DMC 1 and 2. It's just a good story overall, and really improves on everything the first two games set out to do. But there are similarities in the gameplay, of course. DMC 3 keeps the exact same mission structure from DMC 2, though it seems that the criteria for an S rank are a lot more fair this time around. Not that I'm claiming to be a professional at DMC2, but some of it seemed a little off, like needing at least 2,000 red orbs for an S rank on a boss level. Secret missions make a return in DMC3, and the criteria for clearing them are a bit more strange than DMC1, where most of these were kill X amount of enemies with Y limitation, or something along those lines. DMC3 gives you missions where you have to keep yourself in the air for 20 consecutive seconds, keep this elevator clear, which is a pain in enemy difficulties in heaven or hell mode, do a platforming minigame, and so on and so forth. There are still enemy killing secret missions like in DMC1, but they're a lot rarer now. DMC3 also keeps Bloody Palace mode from DMC2, but unlike DMC2, Bloody Palace now has a definitive ending instead of going on forever. Plus, you can now much more clearly see which platforms lead you up to 1 floor, 10 floors, or 100 floors. DMC3 goes back to the gameplay style we know from DMC1, where combos are changed via delays when you press the attack button, but there's also an addition to your arsenal in DMC3 being styles. You have 6 in total, with the Quicksilver and Doppelganger styles unlocked throughout the course of the game, though if you're playing as Virgil, you only have one style, that being Darkslayer, focused on teleporting to and from enemies. For Dante, there's Swordmaster, which gives you mid-air combos along with more moves for your weapons, Trickster, which lets you dash around everywhere, Gunslinger, which is pretty self-explanatory, and Royal Guard, which lets you block and or parry moves. Royal Guard is my personal favorite of them all. I enjoy Potemkin's playstyle. Plus, Royal Release is one of the most powerful moves of the game, if not the most powerful. Aside from Quicksilver and Doppelganger, each style has its own experience bar to fill by just playing the game with the style equipped, and each style levels up to 3 times. Once the style levels up, you gain more abilities for it, like allowing you to dash in midair for Trickster, or giving you a Shoryuken and a Tatsumaki Senpukaki combo for Swordmaster. Yutsuno-san, your Street Fighter showing. Not that it's one of Beowulf's most powerful moves, absolutely decimating some bosses. Ugh. Dante and Virgil both have access to multiple weapons. Dante has 5 total, while Virgil has 3. Let's go over Dante's first. Dante starts with a now signature sword Rebellion, which controls how every other sword is controlled in the series so far for the most part. Stinger, High Time, etc. Then there's Cerberus, the triple nunchucks that have the element of ice, and yes, there are of course fire enemies in the game, along with a boss or 2 that are weaker to it. This is probably to expand upon the enemies that were weak to Ifrit in DMZ1. The next weapon down the list is Agni and Rudra, twin swords of wind and fire. Much like Cerberus, they're big combo strings in mind, so you'll be getting at least 10 hits in for one combo. Then there's the electrical guitar, Nevin. This is the most unorthodox of all the weapons of the game, where, yes, you will be able to attack with the guitar itself, but the biggest damage dealer is how well you actually perform on a thing, something more and more bats the better you play on it to attack your enemy. Finally, there's the Beowulf weapon, which you get very nonchalantly as Dante. Virgil actually kills the thing and gets a weapon for himself, which he can use as well when you play as him, though it controls differently when compared to how Dante uses it. For Dante, Beowulf behaves very much like Ifrit from DMC1, where charging the attacks was the best way to use it, but now it actually has more than one delay combo, unlike DMC1. My personal favorites of these weapons would have to be Rebellion, followed by Beowulf, and then Cerberus, and Agni and Rudra, and finally Nevin as my least favorite. Don't take this as me saying any of these weapons are bad by any means, but this is just how much I like to use each one. Of course, that can mean either a lot or nothing to some people, with the game letting you equip any 2 weapons for a mission, letting you mix and match, and the game does this for the guns as well, but unless I'm going Gunslinger, I don't really use anything besides Ebony and Ivory, the default handguns. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that you can upgrade the guns like in DMC2, and just like in DMC2, the upgrades are nigh noticeable with Dante. Great. Virgil is a lot more technical than you'd expect on the surface, since his weapons all have very little in terms of combos, so the big damage dealers do a considerable amount more than any of Dante's weapons would. I personally stuck with a katana Yamato for the most part, but besides that, his summoned swords are his best weapon. Circle them around you or your enemy, or just have them go all on an enemy in order. It's awesome when you can get this to work, because it actually relies on your devil trigger gauge. The game doesn't tell you this, so I will. If you just press the shoot button, you'll send them out one by one, but hold it down and you'll use up 2 devil trigger runes to basically surround yourself with a gigantic hitbox. It's awesome, especially in Heaven and Hell mode, where everything dies in one hit. Virgil uses his signature katana, Yamato, doing all the moves you see him do in his rival battle. Interesting to note about Yamato is that it's actually the weapon used with the Dark Knight Sparta costume in DMC1, though in that game it was essentially a palette swap of a Laster. All of the moves are based on what Virgil can do in the rival battles actually, with Beowulf and Forsyth being primarily based on his second and third fights respectively. Yamato can dish out extremely powerful hits, though some can take a while to come out, like the equivalent to Stinger. Beowulf and Forsyth behave similarly, which Virgil uses Force Edge in conjunction with Yamato, though Force Edge acts more like it did in DMC1 than anything else, emphasized with moves like Round Trip. All of Virgil's weapons have one combo, a backwards input, a forwards input, and a charge attack, except for Beowulf. With how simple Virgil can be to use, making the style meter go up can be a bit tricky to new players, but it's really very simple as long as you don't repeat the same thing over and over, unlike in previous entries. Yes, the style switch system has been reworked in DMC3, where instead of being able to get an A rank just from a simple gun juggle, you have to actually use different moves to get the style meter high enough, maxing out a triple S rank, with it going down a few ranks each time you get hit. Get hit too many times, and it completely resets. Now with all these abilities you have, there are quite a few bosses and enemies that are going to give you a run for your money, especially in the harder difficulties. Ranging from the 7 Sin variant enemies to the haunted chessmen, plus the fallen angels and literal demons, you have quite a bit of combat variety to go around, and that's without even mentioning the bosses. There are a plethora of bosses in DMC3 as well to keep you on your toes, with each one bringing something different to the table. Like Cerberus being mostly static but being able to easily hit you and knock you back, to Ogni Urza being 2 bosses at once, which can be aggravating when the camera doesn't work with you, Doppelganger, which has these slights to get it vulnerable, Nevin, which is surrounded by bats and you have to destroy the shield for it, and the list goes on. Honestly, with all this said, DMC3 also has its fair share of alternate costumes. DMC 1 and 2 had costumes as well, but 1 only had an alternate Sparta costume, which does return in this game if you beat hard mode with Dante, and DMC 2 did a collaboration with a real-world clothing company. Those are kinda lazy costumes for me personally. DMC 3 has a plethora of costumes in comparison though. There's the default costume, shirtless Dante, DMC 1 Dante, coatless DMC 1 Dante, the Sparta costume, and then there's the 2 super costumes granting a limited Devil Trigger like before. Virgil also has his fair share of costumes as well, and Lady can also get in on the costume fun with a biker suit, though it's only visible in this one image and her boss fight. Personally, I just stick with the DMC 1 costume since it's my personal favorite aesthetically. I like DMC 1's art direction, sue me. Speaking of how things look and sound, DMC 3 does improve on the graphical quality of DMC 2, but it's about equal to DMC 1 in terms of how good it all looks for me. Areas are far more confined than in DMC 2, so the devil is really in the details, and they're alright for what it's worth. The music, on the other hand, can range from unnoticeably okay to childishly badass, like the battle theme's called Taste the Blood and Divine Hate. These lyrics are ridiculous and kinda charming. Of course, with all this in mind, you're probably wondering why I recommended the Switch version in the beginning of this video. Well, that's because of a few things it adds to the game, more specifically, the freestyle mode, which lets you change styles on the fly, and this alone adds so much to the gameplay flow that it makes it the best version of the game, bar none. Even without any other additions, bringing all weapons at once and co-op like pals, this alone sells me on the Switch version. Let's talk about those other things too before I get too lost in ranting. First off, there's a new co-op option for Bloody Palace, which lets another player play as Virgil alongside Dante, much like the second half of the Arkham Blob fight. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get footage of this thanks to it only being local co-op, and COVID-19 is busy keeping my door locked. Freestyle mode, along with letting you change all 6 of your styles with the directional pad, allows you to use all of your unlocked weapons at the same time with the weapon wheel when you switch weapons. Combine this with style switching, and this game is the most engaging, challenging, and interesting playstyle of all DMC games. So far, I haven't seen DMC 4 or 5 yet. But really, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of pure style. I'm never going to claim to be the best at this game by any means, but the amount of things you can do in this game is absolutely insane. And I haven't even mentioned turbo mode, which, it's fantastic. The amount of possible combos you can do just sounds fantastic. Change to get air, raven, racer, die, cancel all real time on landing, just die for a royal car release. Oh man, that's not even counting the quality of life aspect of it. Having a tough time with that one platform secret just watch the creature completely breaking in half. Look at how many of Virgil's moves are perfect parrying here. It's amazing. And I never would have thought to do this if I couldn't switch off in the first place. This is fantastic. Here you go, bye. Yeah, style switching alone makes the Switch port the best version of the game, and that's not even mentioning how good it feels to swap styles with the Joy-Con's directional buttons, no flimsy D-pad. But the style switching, combined with all the weaponry you get, makes it outright ridiculous how amazingly fun this game can be, especially when you turn on turbo mode, which makes it go even faster and more powerful. It's awesome.
Overall, Devil May Cry 3 delivers what I consider to be the definitive Devil May Cry experience for the PS2 era, as next time we're going to be moving up a generation with Devil May Cry 4, and I'm going to be looking at the PS4 Definitive Edition for that. I'm using a controller here because I need something to use as an example, and I don't have the physical copy of DMC4. So, yeah, I'll see you guys next time with Devil May Cry 4 Definitive Edition on the PlayStation 4, the HD port. So, see you guys next time.